So to lead us off, I'm pleased to welcome Drew Burns, who's leading an exciting new effort by the American Concrete Institute, the Center of Excellence in Carbon Neutral Concrete. And I'll have Drew take it from there. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you to the University of Maine for having us here today and to the TIDC. You've put together a really interesting lineup of speakers from a wide variety of topics, and I've learned a lot today. I'm not an engineer by trade, so it's been a lot of information for me to take home with me as well. So NEU was established earlier this year by ACI to help address and accelerate the efforts within the cement and concrete industry associated to carbon neutrality. And carbon in concrete is a hot topic, as Eric just mentioned right now. In fact, carbon in construction in general is a very hot topic. And this is an area where we can make a big impact, as Eric also suggested earlier. We can make a big impact on climate change if things are done correctly through our industry. So with NEU, we are in startup mode, and get for my slides when we go. Oh, gotcha. Thank you. So we're in startup mode at NEU. We were released to the ACI membership earlier this year in March at the March ACI convention. And we have rapidly been growing since then. We are in the planning phases of our organization right now, and I'm going to get into a little bit about what NEU is building later on in the presentation. But to start off, I wanted to start with some basics of carbon and concrete. So you've probably heard some of these statistics before, but bear with me because I think it's important that we start off with some common knowledge on such a robust topic like carbon in concrete. So 51 billion tons of carbon is released every year into our atmosphere, and that's everything. 31% of that number is attributed to how we make things, and that includes cement, steel, and plastics. As Eric mentioned earlier, 8% of the global carbon emissions are associated with cement production, and around 1.2 to 1.4% in the US of US's carbon emissions are associated with cement production. Now that number is being contested on a wide variety of different fronts right now. In fact, we are working on a white paper right now to kind of address the various information out there associated with that number. So a little bit more on the carbon in concrete. A cubic yard of concrete is responsible for the emissions of about 400 pounds of CO2. And this is from the Portland Cement Association. There's some equations or some information on what that equates to in comparison, an average tank of gas in a car. And the US is expected to place about 120 billion square feet of building space through 2050. And that said, obviously the US is a developed country, but we need to think globally about the more developing countries in our world as well. So globally, cement production in Latin America is set to increase by 70% by 2050. And in Africa, those emissions are set to, or that production is set to increase by over 300%. So while we're moving towards carbon reduction in some areas, including the United States, we need to be thinking of how these best practices are going to translate to other parts of the developing world as well. All of this to say is we have a big opportunity. We have a big opportunity to make an impact, and we can begin to do that by implementing the materials that we have available today, but also by being innovative with our construction methods. In order to tackle this, the industry has been diving deep into the details of how to get to net zero. Various roadmaps have been put in place. The Portland Cement Association recently put out a roadmap to carbon neutrality. Globally, there are regional roadmaps, there are product-specific roadmaps, but they all have in mind the goal of utilizing strategies to get to net zero emissions. I envision NEU as not an organization that creates another roadmap, but an organization that provides driving directions that can be used to remove the roadblocks and barriers to the success of these different roadmaps. As Ali mentioned earlier today, we are also a 501c3, and we're here to help. We're here to assist and not to take over the efforts already underway. The Global Cement and Concrete Association for our industry is currently the best snapshot, in my opinion, and best overview of the state of emissions currently and the strategies that we can best bet on to get to net zero. So a disclaimer before I get into some of these strategies. And GCCA acknowledges this as well, but there is significant research and evaluation that needs to be done to ensure that these methods that we're talking about today accomplish exactly what we need. So they've bucketed 7 different strategies as following to help mitigate and reduce carbon emissions to net zero over the next 30 years. One is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. Efficiency in design and construction, clinker reduction, efficiency in concrete production, saving in cement and binders, recarbonation, and decarbonizing electricity. So at NEU, we're looking into the validity of current roadmaps, and it's important to note that as our knowledge base grows, these targets and these different things that we're discussing are going to change, and that's okay, and that's expected. Also, it's not up to the GCCA or cement producers to carry out these roadmaps alone. It's up to all of us, construction professionals, engineers, customers, governments, owners, operators, everybody. So what are the best ways we can start incorporating things now? SEMs are one of the best levers we can pull to start decarbonizing concrete construction right now. Slag cement and fly ash is already widely used and in a lot of areas still very available, although a lot of supply is diminishing as well. And I'll talk on that in a second too. I included Portland limestone cement up here because I think it's interesting to note that last year around this time, I was sitting around tables having discussions on how we're going to implement PLC and that it's going to take 3 to 5 years to fully implement PLC into the market of the United States. Well, now we've seen, I believe, close to all 50 DOTs accept the use of PLC in their projects. And that just speaks to the ability for us to get things done quickly if we really set our minds to it. Encouraging the development of more regional and product-specific EPDs. This is really important and something that we're going to focus on at NEU because without regional and local data to support benchmarks, there's no way to accurately set those benchmarks. Energy efficiency in the production and construction pipeline. Fuel switching, utilizing waste products to supplement the different fuels that we're currently using to create cement. Recycling and upcycling materials. And one thing I wanted to note is working with your cement producers now to see what they already have on the market is going to be very important over the next few years. A lot of cement producers are creating products that incorporate all of these things that I'm listing here. The demand of these products will help accelerate their acceptance and foster future material innovation as well. Sorry that I'm flipping through notes. I went from one presentation to another this week, so I want to make sure I got the right things here. So what to start planning for? Alternative cements, calcined clay cements and ground glass pozzolans. Just as with Portland limestone cement, I would venture to say that calcined clay cements are going to become ever more popular in the next few years. And it's something that we should all be looking at now as how we can start incorporating them or what needs to be done to get them to a point of incorporation to our projects. For example, the Minnesota DOT recently launched a pilot program called Min Road, I think is what they're dubbing it. And it utilizes 14 different mixtures for this project. And they're going to publicly report on how these mixtures have affected lower carbon in the concrete. Alternative and artificial aggregates. Right now, there are companies out there that are creating synthetic limestone aggregates from waste streams and capturing CO2 in the process of creating these aggregates. Fuel switching. We're going to be looking to hydrogen in the future as one of the fuels associated with cement production. There are people working on producing hydrogen in a way that produces zero carbon. And kiln electrification, grid expansion. In order to make sure our efforts moving towards electric operations are effective, there's further infrastructure development that's needed to expand our electric grid capabilities. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage. It's also known as SUS technologies. There are SUS technologies that are being developed that will ideally take carbon from the air and the atmosphere and capture them. However, for today's purposes, I'm discussing SUS technologies that incorporate the capturing of carbon associated with the manufacturing of material production, and either utilizing it for other industries or products or sequestering it directly into the concrete. But there's a lot of barriers to the things that we're discussing here. For EPDs, we need local data, as I mentioned earlier. However, there's not local resources available. So to create an EPD, and I believe Ed was talking about this earlier in his presentation on LCA, you need staff time, you need resources, and you need money to create these EPDs. And at a local level, some of the smaller ready mix producers and people in the field don't have the resources to create those EPDs right now. Also, as new materials come online, we're going to need new PCRs or product category rules to get people to a point where they can create those EPDs quicker than having to first put together a PCR. Material availability. Right now, we have a two-silo problem within cement, the ready mix industry, which basically means that a lot of our ready mix operators are only set up to carry two different materials, one being Portland cement, one being an SCM of sorts, whether that's slag cement or fly ash. But as we get to a point where more different materials are going to be used, we need to make sure that we give the resources to ready mix industry that allows them to be able to carry more than just two materials at a time. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage. The big picture look at SUS technologies is that really we're not going to start seeing the benefits from carbon capture until after 2030, hypothetically. This is because there's scalability issues. We don't currently have the infrastructure in place to make sure that this is a reality in a lot of areas. So over the next 10 years we're going to need to make sure that we can get the infrastructure where it needs to be to make sure that we can incorporate SUS technology. And also quantifying the capture. Right now, there's a lot of different technologies that are out there being used, claiming that they're capturing carbon and injecting it directly into concrete. However, depending on the technology, you might be injecting a small dose of CO2 into the concrete, but releasing a certain amount as well at the same time. And then policy. There's a lot of different policy efforts that need to be undertaken in order to get where we need to go. One that's big, and I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody here, but a lot of our policymakers don't understand what the difference is between cement and concrete, and that's a big issue. So I don't think I'm surprising anybody here, but that's what we're dealing with here. A lot of the people that are making the decisions surrounding all these things don't understand the difference between cement and concrete. Carbon accounting. There's a lot of misinformation out there on exactly how we can account for the CO2 emissions that are associated with concrete production. As I mentioned earlier, we're working on a white paper. Dr. Shoker, who is our lead consultant at NEU, is working on a white paper right now that's going to address this issue. Procurement policies. We're going to be working with the GSA and DOE and other federal procurement agencies to help them make realistic codes and specifications that actually do what they intend. By blanketly limiting cement content, you could have the opposite effect on emissions based on the material availability and other factors. And this is why we need more local and regional EPDs. And then circular economy potential. Now that I've set the stage on the daunting tasks that we have ahead of us and that we're dealing with, what is new and why are we here today? So concrete has been long dominated by the supply side of the industry, and we're now seeing more of a shift to the demand side, and the demand side pulling innovations into common practices, and we want to help facilitate that. However, a lot of owners and operators have a hard time sifting through the various options and information that's out there. So NEU was established earlier this year by ACI to collaborate globally to drive research, education, awareness, and adoption of the use of carbon neutral materials and technologies in the built environment. But let me back up just a bit here. So why ACI? Well, ACI recognized that there was a need for an impartial party to work with industry and nonprofits and corporations to review potentially beneficial technologies and materials. ACI has been a leader in this field for over 100 years already and created the structure, tools, and people to make an impact. And as a consensus-based organization, ACI can leverage its committees and its members to create a peer-reviewed environment to evaluate these different technologies and materials in an unbiased way. ACI also has the education and certification components within its structure and international reach to help us make an impact quickly. So the structure is still being ironed out of exactly what NEU is going to be. But right now we have a board of directors and a strategic planning committee that's working on developing our efforts. We're also going to be working on developing a few different steering committees focused on some specific efforts we're working on. But all in all, we're looking to utilize ACI's departments and assets to quickly make an impact in the industry. That's part of the reason why NEU was created, because the committee structure through ACI tends to take a long time, if anybody's been on an ACI committee, to get anything done. And not that that's a bad thing, but there are certain things that we can do more efficiently and quickly through a separate structure. So here are some of the core functions of why NEU was set up. The top three here in green are the things that we're focused on right now. And that includes technology transfer and professional development. A lot of the talks today discuss the need for education on all these different topics that we've been talking about today. And we hope to help amplify those efforts. Advocacy and technical support, and technology assessment and validation. On the technology assessment and validation piece, we get a lot of questions on that, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a second. In fact, we just hired a director of validation. I don't know if anybody knows who Dean Frank is, but he has exceptional experience in setting up different certification programs and validation programs under ISO standards. And we're very happy to have him come on board. He will hopefully be ironing out this process over the next few months. And I'll get into that in a second as well. So as far as this year and what we're doing now, we're currently in the process of developing a 5-year strategic plan with our board and our leadership. But we've developed an aggressive plan for 2022 that buckets our activities into 6 different but unified areas of focus. That includes our organizational structure. We are a brand new organization. We have to set up our committees, set up our processes, and get everything in place to make sure that we're actually effective. Technology, acceleration, and innovation, codes and policy, education and dissemination, technical assistance, and global impact. So technology transfer, disseminating how to implement the materials and technologies that are going to be going through our validation efforts is going to be very important to what we do. So we're going to be setting up short courses, webinars, and training programs that help us with those efforts. We're also developing a number of carbon neutral concrete summits, the first of which is going to be taking place at the ACI Spring Convention that's happening this next year in San Francisco, California. A lot of our members are tech companies who are located in California and San Francisco, who are developing a lot of different data centers and new construction projects who need our help to sift through all the different information. And so we thought that this would be a good way to kick off our efforts with all of them in our or bring what we're doing to their backyard. And we also have ACI Committee 130 created 2 sustainability guides about 10 years ago for sustainable concrete. And those are available now free on our website at newconcrete.org. And we are developing a 3rd version of that sustainability guide that'll hopefully be out by the end of this year. ACI has long recognized that advocacy for the adoption of its resources is a major component to the success of its mission, and that's going to carry over into what we're doing with NEU. Utilizing the ACI code professionals to advocate for the use of more carbon-friendly specifications and codes is going to be very important. And we hope that we can take these different codes that are being created throughout the United States and accelerate their use within local jurisdictions. Another huge aspect of what we need to be doing in a policy front is driving down the costs of green premiums associated with carbon neutral concrete. Right now, it's estimated that there's about a 75 to 140% price increase for anything associated with carbon neutrality in construction, and that needs to be driven down. So technology assessment and validation, that's the thing that we're going to be really focusing our efforts on. The industry, as we all know, is risk adverse, and while that cautious nature can be helpful, it also tends to inhibit innovation. With the wealth of information that's out there, it is hard for companies to distinguish which materials and technologies to use, and NEU is hoping to provide that guidance. But what will it look like? We're currently mapping that out, but our model of assessment will take, through our committees and subject matter experts, NEU will accept proposals for validation from sponsoring organizations. Those subject matter experts will review and prepare reports, including potentially testing protocols, suggestions and feedback on the efficacy of implementation into the marketplace. Our hope is that this will be much quicker and faster than the typical committee process, as I mentioned earlier. There's a lot to be worked out on this front, but we are hoping to have this process ironed out by the end of this year, accepting pilot projects from our members by the end of this year, and hopefully accepting projects from the industry at large starting in early 2023. We're also accepting an open call for subject matter experts at this time. So Dr. Sumana Soria is accepting our entries for subject matter experts. If anybody here is interested in becoming a subject matter expert with NEU, please email your CV and biography to her. This is going to be, the subject matter experts are going to be paid consulting positions depending on the exact technology or material that comes through this process. We will probably be looking at a 2 to 3 month turnaround for subject matter experts to prepare a report on the validity of that technology in the marketplace. So our members of NEU, who's a potential member of NEU? Really anybody in the construction value chain, project owners, specifying agencies, developers, contractors, material suppliers, all of it. We are rapidly seeing a lot of interest in NEU, and our list of members is rapidly growing, as you'll see in a second here. We have 3 different levels of membership: a supporting member, an affiliate member. That top level of membership gets a seat on our board of directors, as well as specific dedicated consulting time by our engineers at NEU and our subject matter experts for projects that they need help with. So this is more information on exactly what our member benefits are, but I'm going to skip that right now. It's a lot of bulk information, but I wanted to incorporate it in case anybody was interested in that information. Speaking of our members, our founding member is the American Concrete Institute. Without them, we would not be here today or be starting this conversation. So thank you, ACI. Our other members at the various levels include Meta and Breakthrough Energy at the sustaining level of membership. Our supporting member right now is Baker Concrete Construction, and our affiliate members are listed here as well. Some of these members have only been members less than a month, and already Meta has been with us for a few months now, but already we're seeing a number of really innovative projects come to us from them. One of them includes an open source concrete mix design model that's going to be fed by artificial intelligence. So what we're hoping to accomplish here is taking different data points that already exist out there from academia or other organizations and feeding this AI model to be able to spit out a mixed design that'll be that'll take into account your local area and give you a mixed design that hits your needs for durability, strength gain, as well as low carbon in the mixed design as well. We're also engaging a number of what we're calling allied organizations. These are nonprofits or government procurement agencies within the industry. And we're really hoping to engage them not only to amplify and share their resources, but also to bring them together with our members to cross-pollinate ideas and to facilitate the use of best practices in our field. Right now, our allied organizations include the International Code Council Evaluation Services and FISEM. We also are signing at the end of this month a MOU with the Concrete Innovation Hub in Santiago, Chile. And they aren't listed here, but we also have an MOU with FIB, or the International Federation for Structural Concrete, and just signed a consortium agreement with the National Institute of Standards and Technology for their new consortium on low carbon concrete. We're also entertaining MOUs right now with GCCA and ASTM as well. This is our current team here. Myself, Drew Burns, the executive director. Dr. Andrea Shoker is our senior technical consultant and advisor to our board. Dr. Sumana Soria is our technical director. Kelly Dudley is our assistant executive director, and we have a director of marketing, Carrie Moosman. And as I mentioned, we just hired on a validation director, Dean Frank, who will be up there pictured with us at whatever presentation we're at next. So reach out to any of these people. We're actually launching a new website tomorrow. So we have a great website right now, but it's going to have even more information on it starting, I would check on it Friday, but check back and all of our contact information will be on that website as well. The website is newconcrete.org. So as Ali said earlier, I just want to mention that we are also a philanthropic organization and we're here to help. We're not here to duplicate efforts. We're not here to step on anybody's toes, but we're here to be a resource for the industry as we see a real need for various project owners or consumers of concrete to utilize us as a guidepost for getting more carbon neutral concrete methods into their practices. So going into the panel, while I might not be able to have a lot of the answers because we are a very brand new organization, I hope that we can bring up the issues that this group might have so I can take them back to our leadership and work them into the plans that we're developing right now. In fact, our first board meeting with all of our board members in person will be next Friday. So we're going to have Meta and Breakthrough Energy at the table, working with us all day to outline our programs. So if you have any suggestions, now is the time to get them to us. So thank you to the University of Maine again. Thank you to the TIDC for inviting us here to provide an overview of what we're building. And I hope that this was helpful. Thank you.